What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you'll never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, July 31st, 2019. Halfway through the week, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Powwow on a Friday. And certainly in our case, some very, very stormy weather is coming on in. We've got Hurricane Eric, which fortunately is tracking south, but we're going to get under the northern edge of that. Hurricane Flossie, which is expected to downgrade to a tropical storm, though, is aimed right at us, and it's going to be coming in over the weekend, as if we didn't have enough to deal with all of this stuff related to our move to Indiana. Anyway, enough of my own personal travails and everything. But the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and opinions. Well, obviously, last night we had the beginning, part one, of the second Democratic debates. And I think probably the single most obvious takeaway was that it really began to show the divide between the moderates and the progressives. And it wasn't spectacular, what can I tell you? And so the moderates were attacking Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren for being socialists and promising free everything and open borders. And I don't know why people get upset about what's being said on the debates, because it has no more bearing on reality than the promises made on the campaign trail. It's just what they're saying right now to get your vote, and once they are in office, it's going to be completely meaningless. So Marianne Williamson scolded her opponents for taking corporate money while saying they will fight corporations, yada, yada, yada. That's a direct quote from her. And so that kind of made her stand out a little bit. Beto O'Rourke came on out and said that as president, he would sign a reparations bill. Well, Beto, let me put it to you this way. The dinosaur that you descended from stepped on one of the dinosaurs I'm descended from, therefore you owe me reparations. So anyway, it was kind of interesting here. On the subject of minimum wage, Pete Buttigieg suggested you're not a decent Christian if you don't support raising the minimum wage. He seems to have forgotten that there's supposed to be a wall between religion and government in this country. It was designed that way. Now, CNN included Don Lemon as one of the hosts, and he's not a journalist. He's an opinion guy. And he absolutely hates Donald Trump. And he actually at one point asked, what do you say to those Trump voters who prioritize the economy over the president's bigotry? Well, yeah, the economy affects us all. Any bigotry the president might have, and frankly, I haven't seen it other than what the corporate media is trying to manufacture, it doesn't affect my life personally. The economy does. The economy affects us all. And it's not doing all that well, despite what corporate media is telling you. Interesting little point. Bernie Sanders got louder and louder as the night went on. He started off soft and just got louder and louder to the point where even Tim Ryan was commenting on it, about his volume control here. Now, Elizabeth Warren repeatedly refused to answer questions on the M4A tax increase. And the issue here is that millions of American workers could lose their employer-based health care. And the impression one gets looking at these Democrats, or looking at all politicians for that matter, is they know the money is running out. And it's a mad scramble to see who can grab what's left of it. It's like a game of musical chairs. There's more politicians than there are chairs, and when the music stops, they're all scrambling, trying to get one. So Donald Trump, at the end of this debate, basically tweeted on out that as far as he could see, he won the debate. The Democrats did not come out with anything new or innovative. It's just the same old stuff they've been campaigning on. Their message hasn't changed one bit. And that plays to his advantage. And yes, he does. And of course, tonight we have part 2 of the debates, the children of the lesser politicians, if you will, including Hawaii's Tulsi Gabbard, who, after her vote on BDS, I have given up on. I've absolutely given up on. You know, I was conflicted because of her attitudes on the Second Amendment. I liked her because she was anti-war. But when she voted against the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, that was it. That was the camel that broke my straw back. We're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, getting on back to the issue of reparations, which Kamala Harris is in favor of. It turns out Kamala Harris has an ancestor, Hamilton Brown. He was an attorney and he owned slaves, Africans, Creole, Irish, white, black, and brown. So if Kamala Harris wants to promote reparations, she should start with compensating the tens of thousands of souls enslaved by her ancestors in Jamaica, which was a British slave hub for the Americas. So maybe Kamala Harris will understand the stupidity of trying to hold the present generation accountable for things our ancestors did over which we had no control. And in most cases, we don't approve. Now, again, they're having the second debate tonight, and Donald Trump has arranged to run a commercial during that debate pointing out the costs of illegal immigrant health care. And of course, the liberals are furious. How dare you do that? You know, you're defiling our most holy ritual here. But, you know, Trump does need to make that point. Illegal immigrants are getting free health care. Legal Americans aren't, but the illegals are. All right, so let's get on back to this ongoing, continuing debate between Donald Trump and Elijah Cummings over Baltimore. And it has gone on too long, and it is really getting childish, with Baltimore saying, no, we don't have a rat problem at all. You know, those are escaped hamsters. And, you know, Trump just continuing to pound on it. But there was one bright moment. Fox News affiliate WBFF-TV in Baltimore was doing a live video report to try and say our city is absolutely fine. And they were doing a live shot of Maxine Stryker in West Baltimore's Sandtown Winchester neighborhood, and she got photobombed by a rat. It ran right through the scene. Little bit of justice there. So good for the rat, what can I tell you? But the reality is, yeah, Baltimore's in bed. Yes, Baltimore has a nice section. Like every city, there's a nice section where the rich people hang out, and there's the rest of the city that is being allowed to fall into squalor. But you know something? Not too long ago, Bernie Sanders compared the Baltimore neighborhoods to third world slums. Nobody made a big deal about it back then. And under the category of hoisting with your own petard, it turns out that Jared Kushner owns several Baltimore apartment buildings that are among the worst in the city in terms of rodents, mold, even maggots. So it's a little bit ironic there. People who live in rat-infested houses shouldn't throw stones. And, okay. Interestingly enough, November 9th, 2016, one day after Donald Trump won the election, Maryland's largest daily newspaper, the Baltimore Sun, published its own op-ed calling Baltimore a disaster. So even the media in Baltimore itself is saying, yeah, there are problems here in this Democratic stronghold. But the Democrats' solution is believe it's a wonderful place and it shall be so. We can't fix the problems, but we can make you believe everything is wonderful. Fresh coat of paint, everything will be fine. Now, out in California, Governor Gavin Newsom has signed a bill into law requiring all candidates to release their tax returns in order to appear on the state's ballot next year. Now, this article from Station Gossip describes it as the bill would force President Trump to release his tax returns. Well, that seems very selective. And I think the bill could be challenged on that basis. If it was saying all candidates have to release their tax returns, that is legit, and that's going to stand. But it has backed Donald Trump into a corner, because on one hand, he can release his tax returns, but if he comes back and he opposes this bill and tries to fight it in the court, it makes it look more like he's got something to hide. So politics is a dirty business, and we know that. Over at Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, they are gaining ground. They're not getting a lot of attention, which is why they're getting some attention from me today. But apparently, the New York fire commissioners all got together for this conference. And they're calling for a new 9/11 investigation. And they want the focus to be on the existence of pre-planted explosives. So I think probably most Americans understand there's something funny about the official story about 9/11, just as there was something funny about the story of Saddam's nukes, just as there was something funny about the story of Assad's sarin gas. Now, here's an interesting little story. It came out just earlier today, saying that Osama bin Laden's son, Hamza, might be dead. They don't know. He's being described as the potential successor of the former terrorist number one, Osama bin Laden. U.S. media is reporting this, citing 3 unnamed U.S. officials familiar with the situation, claiming the information came from intelligence sources. So this is a big part of what's wrong with corporate media. It's a non-story. They don't know. He might be dead. Maybe he's still alive. I remember there was this one guy that kept reporting he was dead, and then 3 months later he'd show up alive again. But they don't really have a story. But we're going to give it the better headline treatment anyway. By golly. Okay. All right. So, getting into the international news, the Syrian army is advancing in northern Hama. The Tiger forces and their allies renewed their advance on the militant positions in northern Hama, and apparently the Syrian armed forces eliminated at least 5 units of military equipment belonging to the militants and up to 10 members of the militant groups themselves. And by the evening, of actually the 29th, the Syrian Arab Army and its allies had established full control over the villages of Jabin and Tel Mala and the nearby hilltop. They've got the high ground now. The advance was supported by several dozen Syrian and Russian airstrikes. So they're getting serious about finishing this thing up. Yesterday we were talking about how the United States is out there calling to all these other countries, come on down with us to the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to just, crash our warships around and make stink face at Iran. It's going to be a lot of fun. And apparently up in Germany, there was a rather strong debate about it in their legislature. But in the end, Germany has said they will not take part in the U.S. Strait of Hormuz initiative. They can see what's coming. They don't want to be a part of it. They don't want to be a part of the Iranian crisis. They don't want to be part of an Iranian war. So, apparently British fighters based in Estonia were scrambled over the weekend to intercept a Russian Ilyushin-76 military transport plane flying close, but not in, the Baltic nation's airspace. This according to the British Defense Ministry. And according to a Typhoon pilot from the squadron, they continued to escort the transport aircraft as it transited in a north direction away from Estonian airspace. Now, the ministry said this is a routine mission for Typhoon fighters from the Amari Air Base, meant to provide reassurance the British is here to work in partnership with Estonia. In other words, there was no threat from the Russians. And by the way, that Ilyushin, it's a beautiful aircraft. The Russians sure do make them pretty. Britain just sent the planes up there for political reasons, to reassure Estonia, yeah, we're really here, we're involved, trust us. Over in Turkey, social media is now starting to pick up the theme of the S-400 missile system. And there are all these tweets and posts and Facebook basically saying, our S-400 has arrived, be prudent, America. And, you know, despite pressure to expel Turkey from the F-35 fighter jet program, Washington failed to persuade Ankara to take, quote, the right decision, end quote. The Turkish government is clearly showing an intent to follow a policy of multipolarity in international relations. In other words, they don't want to glue themselves to any one nation, especially to a nation which could be looking at imminent collapse. So, apparently Egypt, the United States, and the United Arab Emirates are continuing their joint military drill. It's called Eagle Salute and Eagle Response 2019 in the territorial waters of the Red Sea. Now, Saudi Arabia is participating in the exercises as an observer, and various naval units from the Egyptian, U.S., and UAE naval forces are taking part in the exercise that is set to last for several days. It's sort of like their version of the Rim Pact. The forces are using frigates, missile launching boats, and mine hunters in the exercises. Special naval units, the Coast Guard, and F-16 jet fighters are taking part in the drills. Now, Israel has attacked what they describe as Iranian positions inside Iraq. Not Syria, Iraq. Israel has struck targets inside Iraq. They used the F-35s primarily as missile launching platforms, which is the safest thing you can do with them. But it does mark an expansion of Israeli attacks in the region. And I'm sure that one of the reasons this is happening is to bolster Netanyahu's chances of re-election this coming September. Okay, the Al-Mazan Center for Human Rights reported yesterday that Israeli occupation forces have killed 54 Palestinians in Gaza this year, including 12 children and 4 men. And Israel also injured 3,723 Palestinians in Gaza during the same period, including 1,226 children and 179 women. Now, the center accused Israel of using lethal force to cause as many casualties as possible, mainly when they cracked down on peaceful protesters at the Great March of Return, which has been organized every Friday since the 30th of March last year along the eastern borders of Gaza. So, a lot of people are very upset with the United Nations for their failure to include Israel on the list of nations that abuse children's rights. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And once again, Republic Broadcasting needs you. And we need your help to keep doing what we're doing. And I can't put it any more simply than that. We don't have large corporate sponsors. We don't have deep pockets. We don't have angel benefactors out there. We need you. You know, when you go out for your next burger or something, that change that's accumulating in your pocket or in your bureau, you know how change will pile up? Send it in. And the postal address is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation or pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other times. And folks, if you don't chip in, keep us on the air, we're going to have to sell our control room technicians for medical experiments. Okay, we have a caller on the line here. Joe in Tennessee, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, with this shooting out there at the Garlic Festival, you brought up the SKS a few times, and I just want to say my opinion of the gun, which is for its price, it's a wonderful weapon. I mean, it's an old peasant gun for the Chinese and the Viet Cong. I mean, you can roll around in the mud with it and hammer tent stakes in with it, and still it'll fire.
Yeah, unlike the M16.
For a while there, back in the 90s when Clinton first started his gun, they were going to try to get that gun rule through. I used to buy them for $60 a piece, and I'd buy an ammo can, some stripper clips, and you could put a 30-round magazine on it. It's not detachable, not like an AK-fed magazine, but you could put a 30-round a banana clip on there, a banana magazine on there, and top feed it. I used to buy them and then give them to my friends and my family. I bet you there's 4 listeners to this show right now that have guns that I got them, because I think it's such a wonderful, cheap weapon. And especially for people that have no defense or no self-defense, for that price, at the time, for less than $100, I'd get 200 rounds, 10 ammo can, SKS, rifle stock, and a 30-round banana magazine for less than $100. And so I just, it's nice having an AR-15 and an AK is even better with the easier fed magazine, but I think the SKS, when you can break it down and clean it real easy, it's very reliable. Like I said, it's almost indestructible. So I think and for its price, I think it's a wonderful weapon. And I just wanted to, let you know that, they are cheap, but that's a good thing, for the quality of that gun.
I'm not saying it's a bad weapon. I'm just saying that there's been, this very obvious effort by the media to try and say, oh, assault weapon, assault weapon, assault weapon. Now, one of the good things about moving to Indiana is their gun laws are a lot less restrictive than here on Hawaii. The bad news is, at my age, I'm pretty much I'm not a gun enthusiast anymore. And even when I was a gun enthusiast, having 30-round clips and everything, was not. I'm a black powder enthusiast. I get one shot, and you learn to make that one shot count.
Well, my dogs get all scared when I shoot guns, and I really wouldn't consider myself a gun enthusiast, but I do like to see an armed population, because an armed population, I hope that I never have to fire a gun in anger, none of my friends or anything, but I know it's a deterrent.
Yes.
The people having guns is a deterrent to socialists, communists, Marxists, Nazis, whatever. When the population is well armed, like in Switzerland, it seems like you're going to have a lot more freedom, and that's my whole point of it. Is like I said, well, I don't really like shooting animals.
I'm in agreement. I support an armed population, and again, I agree with those court decisions that have repeatedly said the Second Amendment guarantees to the people the same kind of weapons carried by the uniformed services, and. That's the way it's supposed to be, a balance of force, so the government minds its own business and doesn't try and become a dictatorship. Now, I don't want to see a revolution in this country. I don't want to see blood in the streets. But on the other hand, it looks like if the American people continue to back down and surrender, we're going to get it anyway, because we're going to reach a point of government repression where there's going to be blood anyway. Look at what's going on over in Israel where it's a completely one-sided situation. You have the heavily armed Israeli forces versus Palestinians throwing stones, and they're getting their heads blown off, the Palestinians.
Well, yeah, and then in this country with false flags and Antifa, and they can just get away with all these fake shootings and blame. Of course they'll probably end up blaming the right somehow or another.
Yeah, they're blaming everybody. Anyway, Joe, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Charles in Michigan. Aloha, Charles. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Wondering if you'd had a chance to take a look at H.R. 1837, the United States-Israel Cooperation Enhancement and Regional Security Act.
Just to scan it over, I mean, I've got it up on my browser here right now. Why don't you give us a précis on it?
Well, the thing that really interests me about it is the last segment. I have the text up, excuse me, which is the best site that I've found. It includes just about everything that the United States is involved with: agriculture, water, minerals. So when they say that they are cooperating with each other, basically what they're doing is sharing everything that's going on. We already know that Israel is pretty much in control of our government and our military.
And our intelligence apparatus.
So it's exactly. And what really worries me about this one is they're coming into the open about it. Now, last weekend, Israel had a missile test in Alaska, as you're aware of.
Yes.
Are you aware that site is now under the flag of United States and Israel?
It was a joint test, so I could understand the symbolism. Yeah. But again, in the overall, yes, we're in serious trouble here with the extent to which we are under the control of a foreign power. We're an occupied nation. We have a Vichy government in Washington, D.C., and you're absolutely right. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, especially when you look at this attempt to criminalize criticism of the government of Israel. I mean, that strikes right at one of the most fundamental foundations of our nation, that right to freedom of speech, that First Amendment. And yet our Congress is apparently willing to just throw that into the shredder to please their masters in Tel Aviv.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid that actually they're not even their masters as much as the people that are in our Congress are, in fact, Zionists.
I think the people in our Congress are just opportunists, and they know that, Israel has all this control. They've got all this money. They've got a lock on the media. I'm sure that probably one of the major reasons why Tulsi Gabbard went along and voted against BDS was her awareness that she needs the support of the Jewish-controlled media and the Jewish vote, if you will, if she's going to have a chance in the 2020 election. But for her to sell out that quickly and that obviously, that was kind of it. And I'm not a Tulsi supporter anymore. I don't support anybody, as a matter of fact. I don't have a dog. I don't have a dog in this hunt.
I don't yet. Chelsea was mine until I saw that as well. That pretty much ended it for me.
Yep.
So that's all I was really interested in talking about. I just wanted. I think that all of your viewers should take the time to read the H.R. 1837. It would really might wake up some people. So
Yeah, it's
thank you.
basically it's putting
Appreciate the
Israel
time.
in charge of major parts of our economic infrastructure. I noticed a section where they're promising cooperation on directed energy weapons.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and in dealings with foreign governments, that's in there too.
Yes.
I mean, we're going to have Israel and the United States are going to go and deal with foreign governments together. Anyway, thank you very much, Mike. Have a
All
good
right.
show.
You've got it. Thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch over to Jim and Kauai. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, aloha, Michael. This Kauai guy here in Kilauea, on the North Shore.
Ah, I
I
see.
just called to say aloha to you.
Well, I'm going to say aloha back.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, I've decided that after the move to Indiana, I'm going to keep on using aloha on this show because I've been doing it all along. It's going to be very hard for me to stop. I haven't found anything really cute to say in Indianese. It's part of the show's brand, and so I'm going to go on using it, even though I am not physically in Hawaii. Certainly in my heart, I remain so.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Yeah, I usually catch the reruns, the replays.
Yes.
This is the first time I've tried to call in. I'm surprised I actually got on live. But when I heard you up in Honolulu, you're right up the road.
Yes.
I wish I had known. I could have met you up there maybe. But
well, we
anyway,
were just so exhausted, and we didn't get out to do half the stuff we had planned on doing because we just collapsed. It was a very arduous trip out there.
Really?
And yeah. Now we're both feeling a lot better today. But of course, we have to get back to all of this packing stuff because in 2 weeks, the movers show up to basically pack what's going to Indiana. And between now and then, we've got to get rid of the rest. And, I'm trying to find homes for a lot of this stuff that needs to be given away.
Yeah.
I have this problem. I cannot throw a working piece of equipment into a trash bin. And so right now I'm just calling around to everybody and saying, can you use this? Please take this.
Yeah. Actually, Moving Biz is my email is movingbiz@ON.net, and yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Well, gosh darn, we should have contracted with you.
Yeah, well, yeah, I had a lucrative Moving Biz in California running auctions. But I did that a little bit over here, and I still my box truck had died years ago, so I use a U-Haul truck whenever I get a moving job.
Yeah.
Right now, landscaping pays the bills. The garden island, landscaping is a ongoing thing.
Yes, it is.
But but anyway, I'm totally on board with what you said about Tulsi Gabbard. I just found out she was CFR.
Yes,
I had no idea about that.
Yeah, she's CFR, and all this other stuff is coming on out. And apparently, she does have a 1 degree of separation link to Sheldon Adelson, and that may also be the reason why she voted against the BDS. Is Sheldon Adelson said, "Don't you support that? Don't you support BDS?
Yeah,
You'll never work in this town again."
Yeah, they ain't nobody. I'll tell you what, we're in the last days, and I'm just waiting for the rock and roll, actually. Kind of hoping one of those hurricanes comes by again. Yeah, after Aniki.
I remember Aniki. Well, we're looking at, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Hurricane Eric is going to miss us to the south. We'll get a little wind and rain from it. But Hurricane Flossie is aimed right at the Hawaiian Islands. But it will be downgraded to a tropical storm by the time it gets here over the weekend. But we're probably going to get some serious wind and rain and thunder from it.
Well, whatever's behind that, because I'll tell you what, I never saw more love and aloha here on Kauai after until the power came back on here in Kauai. I mean, we were right in the eye of Iniki.
Yeah.
And, it's pretty devastating. A couple of people died. But I'll tell you what, I never saw more love and aloha since, since that time.
Well,
And
a disaster like that can pull people together. And when Claire and I were in New York for the 10th anniversary of 9/11, I was commenting to one of the taxi drivers how everybody seemed a lot more mellow than the previous time I'd been in New York, when the towers were still standing, and the New Yorkers more closely fit the stereotype of the New Yorker, yelling at each other. And he said, oh yeah, 9/11 completely changed the city. And it did pull us all together.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt. But I think this hurricane season, it wouldn't break my heart at all. And I'm not alone. There's a bunch of people that argue with me, but there's plenty of people that agree with me that we need another hurricane.
Well, I don't agree with you on that one. Hurricanes are bad things, and certainly in Honolulu, they are still recovering from those massive floods they had to deal with.
Oh, big time. Yeah, they just opened the road, but it's still one lane going down out hill into Honolulu. I've only been down there once.
Yeah.
That's the landslide on the Honolulu.
Yeah, I saw the where they put up that big fence to stop the rocks from coming off the edge of that cliff. So, well, it's erosion. It's nature.
I'll tell you what, I never felt more at home since I left Topanga in California until I came to Kalalau in the Napali coast. I spent the summer on the Kalalau Valley.
Yes.
And the beach there. And have you ever been out to Napali?
Oh, yeah, very much so. I've even been down to Ni'ihau.
Oh, really? Awesome,
yeah.
Awesome. Yeah,
I stayed below the mean high water mark. Otherwise would have been a huge ticket. But yeah, Claire and I actually got out to Ni'ihau. And we were hoping to get to sort of round out the collection down to Molokai and Lanai, but obviously that is not going to happen.
Yeah, Molokai is my second choice to Kauai. I spent a few weeks out in Molokai, and that was very beautiful too. And then the Napali coast over there is beautiful. All those waterfalls, awesome out there.
All right. Well, listen. Thank you for the phone call. I'm going to let you go before I start crying again over having to leave. And we're going to switch on over to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Yeah. Well, before I get started on what I wanted to say, if we start cutting our defense budget, considerably, one of the projects we could work on is making with a boom that would be to Hawaii to build either a tunnel or a bridge, or partly a tunnel and a bridge to Hawaii, so people could actually drive back and forth here. But you don't think it's possible?
Oh, who was it? Was one of the squad actually seriously suggested that? To prevent global warming, we've got to stop all those airplanes in the air. People have to go back to cars and trains, and yes, we're going to have to build a bridge to Hawaii. And clearly does not understand the realities of the Pacific Ocean between the West Coast and Hawaii, the problems with the ocean floor, and it sounds romantic. I understand they're seriously thinking about a bridge across the Bering Straits connecting Siberia and Alaska. That's going to be a major project. And if you look at all the problems they had with the Channel Tunnel and then multiply them by 10, you'll see what a problem it's going to be.
And I guess I get your point that, like I said, I'm not an engineer, so, I really don't know, all what it would take. But anyway, I want to get back to the BDS thing. I think what you're seeing with a lot of the American politicians, what you're seeing is really basically Jeffrey Epstein, what the Epstein case is about. And this is why I think they're trying to everything they can to try to suppress it, hide it, and do whatever else. The mainstream media isn't even reporting on it right now. I think what that shows is all the American politicians that are being blackmail, both Congress, other parts of the government. I don't think Tulsi Gabbard is going to blackmail, but I think with her, I don't know what I don't know why she signed on to this. I know from what I understand, it doesn't have any teeth. The one in the House has no teeth. It's just a statement. And she also says, well, we are asking for a two-state solution and blah 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 blah. So
yeah, it's a non-binding resolution, but still, there is a principle involved here that we want politicians who will represent us and not a foreign country.
Absolutely, and I don't know why she signed on to this. A big mistake.
I agree.
Like I said, tonight in this debate, what she needs to do is go right after Biden. Attack Biden immediately. Go after him. Call him that he's a globalist. That he's a warmonger. He signed on to all these wars in the Middle East, including Afghanistan and Iraq, and that's basically what he's also very corrupt. He was correct. He's got involved with the Ukraine there and all that, and she needs to jump on him with that. But now she kind of like she's hurt herself with this coming out for anti-BDS.
She has.
Because it would kind of make her look a little hypocritical at this point. Because, she could have attacked Biden on his Israel policy too, his Israel first policy. The big-time Zionist. I think he even admitted he's a Zionist. I think he even said he was a Zionist. Kind of like Stephen K. Bannon admitted he's a Christian Zionist, That's what. So now she's hampered herself. And the last thing she needs to do is hamper herself because she doesn't have enough support as it is. And they're all piling up against her. I don't know what she's thinking by going along with something like this. I really don't.
Well, she got some bad political advice on that one, or maybe her political advisor is saying, "Oh, it's much more important to please Israel than to please the voters. Forget the voters. We've got the election rigged anyway, and you're going to lose anyway. So just have fun and enjoy the parties and the travel and everything."
This has to, this whole Epstein thing should wake people up. I mean, I don't know how they're going to stop it. Other than taking Epstein off the count, killing him. I don't know how else they're going to stop him from, all the stuff that's going to come out about that this was an Israeli operation. This was a Mossad operation. Just the fact that woman, what's her name? Not Blackwell.
Okay, Mark. Mark,
yeah.
I'm going to put you on hold.
Yeah.
Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Mark in North Carolina. We're talking about Hawaii's Tulsi Gabbard and how she has really done a huge amount of damage to herself with this vote on this House resolution condemning the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, which a lot of people are upset because the resolution clearly mischaracterized what the movement was all about. And apparently Tulsi has taken so much heat. She put out a video on Twitter where she tried to come on out and say that no, in point of fact, condemning BDS is not an attack on freedom of speech. I will always support freedom of speech, blah, 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 blah. But there is absolutely no question that she has done her campaign a huge amount of damage with this.
Yeah, Mike, I agree. I mean, like I said, I don't think she's one of those people blackmailed, but she definitely, she's going along with the establishment in this. And like I said, I think the establishment is so many of them are probably going to, hopefully we're going to find out that they are blackmailed. That's the, by Epstein. And I think that Maxwell's the guy's name I was thinking about, the Mossad spy, famous Mossad and British spy.
Yes.
His daughter is supposedly his girlfriend. I think she's his.
Maxwell's daughter is Epstein's. Yeah. Well, used to be his girlfriend. I think they've kind of gone their separate ways since then. Ghislaine Maxwell.
No.
And she's got her own legal problems because apparently she was the madam. She was, recruiting these underage girls for these. Little trysts and for the honey traps. So she's got her own issues. But
I think she's his controller, really. I think she's his Mossad controller, and I believe she's going to disappear into Israel somewhere. anyway, and they're not going to give her up. That's happened before with criminals.
Israel does not extradite to the United States of America. Anyway, Mark, pardon me. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to Art off the grid. Aloha, Art. Welcome to the show, and I'm probably going to have to take you through the station identification. What's on your mind?
That's okay. If you have to hold me over, you have to hold me over. This is live radio, after all.
Yes.
Before I get what I called about, because I want to talk about the debate last night, specifically Beto O'Rourke, but just to comment real quick on Tulsi Gabbard's vote on that anti-BDS bill condemning the BDS movement.
Yeah.
That is an attack on free speech, because there's this thing, it's called voting, and voting is not just at the ballot box. You got voting with your feet. If you don't like the laws or the statutes and codes where you live, you move to a place that is more conducive to what you believe. If you have issues with anti-abortion laws, then you move to a state that doesn't have such restrictive anti-abortion laws. This is called voting with your feet. Well, the BDS movement is what's known as voting with your dollar.
Yes,
this is all
voting with your wallet.
This is commerce. This is barter, exchange, and trade. This falls under commerce law. You have the right to contract.
Art, hold that thought. We got to take a break for station identification. We'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're talking with Art off the grid, and we're talking about basically the right to boycott as a legitimate form of free expression, protest protected by that First Amendment. And we were talking specifically about how a boycott is a way of voting with your wallet by saying, I am not going to buy this product because I don't agree with the policies of that government. Now, you notice the hypocrisy here. We're being told that we cannot refuse to buy Israeli products because we don't agree with Israel's policies. Meanwhile, you've got Donald Trump up there saying, well, we're going to sanction Russia, and we're going to sanction China, and we're going to sanction these people over there because we don't like their policies. So a little bit of a double standard there. And by the way, I've gotten absolutely no response to the comment I made yesterday. With Russiagate completely proven to be a myth, it's time to drop those Russian sanctions.
Yep. So anyway, this is what's called voting with your dollar. And it's also why Walmart has made such a big splash in the United States, because people voted with their dollar in favor of cheaper, basically defective products, cheaper garbage. They would rather pay less money and get something cheap and that's going to break down in a year or two than to pay decent money and get something that's going to last 5 or 10 years. This is called voting with your dollar, and this is why the mom and pops are going out of business. Walmart's making big bucks because people have voted to spend less, get more while getting less at the same time. You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
So this is all, and it's called contract, the right of contract, and this is a form of contract. People don't understand. When you walk into a store and you give them X number of Federal Reserve notes in exchange for an item, this is a contract between you and the person that you're purchasing the product from. You're agreeing under contract with this legal note, of legal tender. This is a form of contract. Anyway, because I wanted to really talk about the Beto O'Rourke and the debate last night.
Yes.
And the one thing that really stood out with him, and of course, Bernie, I was just getting a big kick. I mean, he was turning all kind of red in the face, and you could tell he was getting frustrated because everybody except for Elizabeth Warren was hammering him on health care. And it was just, you could tell he was getting frustrated. But Beto O'Rourke said something that just really, if words could physically slap you, Mike, I got just about damn near knocked out last night. That's how hard this hit me. When he said, if he were elected president, quote, as president, I will sign a reparations bill.
Yes.
Now, you want to talk about you want to piss off some folks. If you don't think for 1 second that won't result in violence and bloodshed, try it. Because I guarantee you, people will rise up and say, you have got to be out of your flipping mind. You know, the whole thing, if tonight is anything like last night, Trump's already won this election, and we ain't even got into the run.
Yep.
Because what I saw between the first set of debates a couple of weeks ago, or about a month ago, and what I saw last night, if tonight is anything like the past three, Trump's won hands down. I'm serious. He's won hands down because there's no way any of these people can win. The only one that actually really made any sense at all to me last night, and God, I can't believe I'm actually agreeing with someone, is what was her name? The spiritual author, Harrison, I think her
Yes.
name is. She's the only one that actually made any damn sense last night. And what really got me on her was when she said, until we address these issues, I'm like, holy crap. This is the first time I've ever heard a Democrat say that we need to address these issues, because these are the issues that are plaguing the Democrat Party. And I'm sitting there just blown away at, I mean, if she, as far as I'm concerned, she was the winner last night because she's the only one that actually made any sense at all. And I don't really agree with her on much of what she said, but she was the one, between her and Delaney, those are the only two last night that really made any sense. Her with we need to address these issues that are plaguing the Democrat Party, and Delaney on his, look, let's just, and I don't agree with, healthcare is right, bull, poppycock. But what he presented was something that I can say, okay, I can see that, and that is make it available so that those who don't have insurance can get it through this program, but at the same time, we don't take away everybody else's health care. Because I'm going to tell you something. I don't have the best health care insurance in the world, but what I've got ain't bad. And I have almost no out-of-pocket at all.
Well, that's a good
Now,
situation to be in.
You want to take that away from me? I have worked hard for that. I have put in my years. I have worked hard for that. And you want to take that away from me? Imagine how the union workers will feel when you take what they've got. They actually have, because a lot of unions, their workers got pretty dead. Their insurance is a little bit better than mine. All right, and I kind of like what I got. But
Yep.
theirs is, in many ways, a lot better than mine. And you want to take that away from them? Are you kidding me? Seriously? These people have worked for what they've got. And you want to take that away? These people, I tell you what, Mike, if last night is any indication of what we got in the Democrat field, Trump has already won.
Well, I think the Democrats know that, and I'm hearing this sort of back channel discussion where they're still talking about Hillary coming on in, but her brand is so badly damaged. They're even talking about throwing Michelle Obama in there.
Oh, God.
Desperation on the cusp
Look,
of madness.
If I have to choose, if I have to go with an Obama, give me what's the oldest one's name? What is her name again? Oh crap, I can't even think of her name right off the bat. But the oldest Obama girl.
Yeah.
I'd rather take her over. I'd rather take her over her mom. But if I had to choose, if you're going to throw a Clinton out there, oh my God, please give us Chelsea.
Well, I don't know. I mean, well, first of all, Chelsea's dealing with new family issues, but she was raised by Bill and Hillary Clinton, and so I would be very leery that she is a chip off the old block, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you got to choose a Clinton, you might as well get a young one, right? Anyway, thanks, Mike. Have a great one. Talk to
All
you
right,
later.
thanks an awful lot here. We're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And we're going to go back to the phones to Paul in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael.
Hello.
Michael, a few points. I'm very sympathetic towards Bernie Sanders, particularly his views about American health care. we have to be honest. American healthcare has failed the American people.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you go to a typical doctor's office, and who do you see? I'll tell you what you see. As soon as you walk in, you see typically one or two women on the phone. And they're not talking to their girlfriends about things around the house. No, they're talking to other insurance companies trying to work out your bill.
Yep.
And so we have a Byzantine bureaucracy of parasites that stand in the way of you and your doctor in trying to get affordable health care. And I agreed with both him and Elizabeth Warren. She, too, basically understands the problem with American health care. It's the, well, for one, it was Obamacare that was written by the insurance companies. And two, there's no unified, like, policies to make, you know, them work synergistically so they're more similar to each other and have similar rules so it could be more efficient. None of them care about efficiency. You know, they pointed out that the healthcare companies, or I mean insurance companies, make, I forget how many billions in profit per year. That's the profit. That's not the expenditure on the bureaucracy of the insurance companies. See what I mean?
Yes.
And these are people that don't heal you. They don't give you anything, any services whatsoever, other than just standing in the way of you and your money. And that's the problem. And this is where, and what a lot of people don't understand now, yeah, what Bernie Sanders is offering ultimately socialist medicine, but people have to understand the importance of what is known as the singularity. And with modern computing power and unified computing power, that if the government did run, and actually they ought to farm it out to somebody who would do it efficiently, like a Google, right? And basically, your only interaction with your insurance is through your own private portal, which tells you the amount of money you have, and you basically have an individual insurance fund, which is mandated through the government, right? And money is put aside by your employer for your family's health care plan system. Through a simplistic billing plan and a universal one, it could be very efficient, way more efficient than we have now. And instead of people in the doctor's offices having to be hired and, you know, provided with health care and all the rest, they would just go to the computer and you would pay through the one simple computer program, and voila, done. We're singularity. So I think some of the people out there don't understand, first of all, how modern computers can solve a lot of these bureaucratic problems and get rid of these.
Well, if the computers are working correctly, which is more and more questionable, especially if you look at the problems on the 737 MAX, these computer systems are being put out there without being properly, adequately tested. And here we're talking about computer systems in which we're supposed to entrust our life. And for me, the big problem with our current medical system is that it's not just all the layers between you and the doctor to get care. It's the delay. And the thing that really got me angry over the treatment of Claire, when she suffered her spinal fracture in January of last year, it was 90 days, 3 months before Straub would see her and we could find out exactly what we were dealing with, what was causing all that pain. And because of that 90-day delay, her vertebra may have partially fused in an incorrect orientation. It was terrible. One of the reasons we're moving to Indiana is we're going to have family around us, 2 of whom are medical professionals. So we're not going to have any more of this 90-day nonsense.
Well, I think also I wonder whether you being in Hawaii played a role in that, instead of being on the mainland where you could try and shop for doctors elsewhere, even out of state for that matter.
Well,
but another point that that Bernie made last night, I really like this because it was a bit of a publicity stunt on his part, is how he brought a group of diabetics over to Canada to buy, insulin at the Canadian prices, which is 1/10 the price of American insulin prices. So by all measures, now here's what it comes down to, is if we really have the best health care system and we really are capitalist and we're superior by all means than the rest of the world, how come ours isn't the cheapest and having the best results? And yet, if you look on many of these, I'm looking at an article from the Business Insider, we're rated number 36. France and Italy are number 1 and 2, right? So we're failing. This system is a failure. And so Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, hats off to you. At least you're talking about the failure. Where's Trump? He said he was going to overturn Obamacare. Where were the Republicans? They said they were going to try to revamp the health insurance and the healthcare industry. They did nothing. They had 2 years. They did nothing. So don't be mad at the Democrats for trying to find another problem when the Republicans have sat on their hands, and you know they have shares in these healthcare insurance companies and all the rest, and in Big Pharma, and they're collecting their dividends. They don't give a damn. They pretend like they're against it, but once they had the chance, they went right along and let it ride because they didn't overturn it when they had the chance. So don't blame the liberals for trying to change our systemic failures. And that's why I'm totally sympathetic with Bernie. If he wasn't so old and crazy about some of the other stuff, I might vote for him.
Okay, well, we'll have to look at that a little bit more closely. But the reason our medical system is a mess goes all the way back to Richard Nixon and the Health Maintenance Organization Act, which Nixon signed into law as a favor to his friends over at the Kaiser Permanente. And that was the point at which medicine stopped being about medical care and became another for-profit operation. So well,
if it's for profit, that is the definition of capitalism, right?
Well, prior to Nixon, there were laws limiting how much money medical establishments could make on their patients. So that
would be called that would be called government regulation, then, huh?
Well, it worked back then because it kept the prices down. And so anyway, listen, got to let you go. We've got other callers on the line. So let's switch to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. I'm probably going to have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Mike, if Tulsi Gabbard was president and she did sign for the BDS thing, like, nothing's changed. You know what I mean? Like, nothing's changed. Like, Trump gets in, nothing's changed. Obama, nothing. Tulsi Gabbard does this flip with the beat. It's just unreal, like how they're all sellouts.
Yes.
And if some of your listeners think Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, he kept railing against Wall Street, remember, or the banks.
Yep.
He probably in the pocket of them. I mean, come on.
Well, they probably all are to one extent or another. It's like I said at the beginning of the show here. I don't know why people are even paying attention because, what is being promised at the debates has no more basis in reality than what is being promised on the campaign trail. It doesn't matter what they say here. Should they win the election, it's not going to happen probably.
And you know why? Because the system sucks. It's corrupted.
Yes.
The medical system's corrupted. This military-industrial complex we got, obviously that's corrupted. Our government has failed us. And if anybody thinks we're going to rise up, I said it before and I'll say it again. The only thing Americans rise for is using the toilet and reaching for the Cheetos during the big game. Like, that's it. There's not going to be no rising up for this because we've been dumbed down so long thanks to our great schools. That's it. That's it, man. And I mean, Tulsi Gabbard has basically, I thought Trump was like it, but Tulsi Gabbard has just doubled it for me, like to say, this system's finished, man. Like, geez, what else can go wrong? Like, who else can stab us in the back? Like, Rand Paul coming back from Iran saying, bomb them? Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, gee, I mean, I give up. I'm not voting no more. That's it. I'm not voting. I don't care who's running because you're just going to be you're going to set yourself up for a big fat disappointment.
Yep.
And you said you don't have no dog in this hunt anymore. this is true. I don't either. Because of Tulsi Gabbard. She's the cherry on top of the ice cream, man. Like she showed you what it's all about. They don't care about us. That's it, man. Sheldon Adelson's one person.
Yep.
We are millions. And she goes with Sheldon Adelson. I mean, come on now. That tells you what they think about us.
Yep.
Well,
the big problem is when they repealed all the limits on campaign donations, because the way it was originally set up, everybody, rich or poor, could only donate so much to a candidate, so that the candidate's war chest was a true reflection of their popularity. When that was all taken away, it basically opened the doors for the rich to buy the candidates out from under us. Anyway, listen, we got to take a break for commercials. Do you have any more, Dustin?
Yes. Can you hold me over?
Yeah, I'm going to hold you over. Stay on the line.
Okay, thanks.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Dustin in New Jersey. We're talking about we're talking about a bunch of different stuff here. So, Dustin, you said you had more that you wanted to share with us.
I wanted to finish this up before one more quick topic. Do you listeners remember Bernie Sanders, who ran against Hillary and she stole the nomination from her, and he did squat about it, Mike? He didn't do zip, because they either had him blackmailed, which was in the email, said we had leverage on him, if people know about that email. But either way, he didn't do anything about it. He folded up like a cheap tent, or whatever you call it. So how many times can people write chump on their forehead? That's chump, not Trump, before you run out of room, Mike.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sorry, but all these people are garbage. They're garbage, And it's whoever, remember, they picked the nomination, so all these people are picked. We're not picking any of them, So, and I want to end off with that subject, and then real quick, Mike, I know you're going to talk about the economy, about if everything is so good, why do they reduce the interest rates?
That signals we're going into a recession.
And that's not good, Mike, But that's all I have to say, Mike. Have a good rest of the show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Tom in Florida. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good day to you, Michael, and good day to Dustin. Yeah, Dustin, I don't blame you for not voting. If I was Dustin, I wouldn't vote either. Not in the state of New Jersey. Maybe he came to Florida, his vote would count, but in that state, it doesn't count. So that's what I got to say about that. As far as hold on. So anyway, that's what I got to say about that. If he's in Jersey, his vote ain't gonna count. So, Michael, what I want to talk about is that debate last night. That wasn't a joke.
Yes.
That actually was a. So watch this Bernie and all these libs want to give the kitchen sink away. Who's going to pay for all this, Michael? Who's going to pay for it all?
That's something none of them will answer. They're coming on out and playing the typical Democrat thing. Vote for us. We're going to give you free stuff, and nobody says how they're going to pay for it. Remember when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez came out with her Green New Deal, and everybody was saying it's going to be hideously expensive. How are you going to pay for it? And she'd say, "Well, we'll just pay for it." Okay, how? Well, we'll just pay for it. No idea whatsoever. Latest estimates are that the Green New Deal would cost the average American family $70,000 a year.
That's correct. I mean, it's unbelievable, and the American public don't buy into that. Give me a break. I mean, what do you have, a bunch of dingbats? And the demon rats? I don't know, Michael. But another thing that's going on is, with this, now we got Biden's coming on tonight with what's her name, Harris, and that's going to be another spectacle. And then you got the one guy, what's his name, Cory Booker wants to punch Trump in the mouth and all this. And getting back to what happened, I want to tell Dustin, is in the state of Florida, my vote really did count because we got a governor who's now got rid of sanctuary cities. If the guy Gillum would have got in there, this state would have been ruined like New York, and New Jersey. But since we got a state now that actually says, no, you come here illegally, you get the hell out of here. Now, my vote really did count. His vote doesn't count in Jersey or New York.
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying, Michael?
I hear what you're saying, yes.
In this state, the vote really did count. It hasn't counted in Jersey for, 30, 40 years?
It's pretty messed up. Well, it's pretty messed up. One of the areas in which I'm disappointed in Trump is he came on in basically acknowledging there are serious problems with our elections, and he was going to deal with it. And then he set this commission. The commission was, meeting some resistance from the state election commissions for obvious reasons, and Trump just dropped the ball.
Well, yeah, you're right, Michael. But Michael, one more thing, and I'll let you get another caller. But this is really heavy duty, Michael. You had a caller before Dustin. He called in. He was pretty cool. But yeah, Michael, let's look at the illegal immigration. I told you about OAN, One American News. I was watching them yesterday. Every hour on the hour, they give the immigration figures. Now, listen to this, Michael. In all these countries, only the men drive cars. You got 1.7 million in agriculture totally in the United States feeding the United States its food. I say 2 million at the max. You got all other multiple millions in here doing, I don't know what they're doing, but they all want to drive cars. When they're in their country, they don't drive cars. The women don't even drive a car. You understand?
Yes.
So you talk about AOC and Bernie Sanders without the Green New Deal and all these global emissions. All you hear about, the global war, the heat. Well, when all these multiple millions of more people coming in here wanting cars because they need a car to go to work, you cannot live in the United States without a car. So all these freak shows in a Democratic Party, it's global warming. What a lie. Why are you allowing this country to be flooded with hundreds of millions of illegals, Michael?
Okay, well, Tom, on that note, we have to let you go and take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And let's see. Our next call is Al in Canada. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I've been looking at population growth of the United States, since the 50s. And, it's a fairly straight line. And in order to support the Ponzi scheme, that is a debt-based monetary system, you have to have a growing population. You have to have peons on the bottom to pay for the people on the top.
Yeah, but they've got to have jobs.
Yes. But another thing that's interesting is, for instance, in 1955, the United States population accounted for 6.2% of the world's population. In 2019, it accounts for 4.27%. And at the same time, the fertility rate in 2019 was 1.88, and in 1955, it was 3.31. So, obviously, a lot has changed, and primarily one of the things that has changed for the worse is obviously the monetary system. And we've talked about Nixon. And you mentioned him again today, and the amount of damage that him and his administration and his puppet masters did to the United States in 1971. Basically that's where a lot of these problems stem from. Delinking the dollar to the convertibility of the dollar into gold, right?
To unlinking it, yes.
And then you have the healthcare system is now for profit or a business. So guess what? You get to make money off other people's misery, and it's crazy. You start thinking about these things, and you realize that, you know what, Dustin, your vote doesn't count. No, ordinary people's votes don't count in the United States, and increasingly up in Canada, because of the fact that now you have this huge, massive money supply, and only a few people have access to it. and they pretty much got the country locked up. They do what they want with it.
Mm-hmm.
And no one says any different. The last person that did, I guess, would have been Kennedy. So that's how it is. I mean, you know, Mike, if you this collapse you always talk about, I hope it happens soon because this nonsense is coming up to Canada, and you know we're not far behind as far as corruption and blatantly seeing that there is a two-tiered system. It's us and it's those other people up there. So anyways, those are my 2 cents, Mike. I appreciate your time.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And we're going to switch over to Rick in Arizona. Aloha, Rick. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
A couple of things quick, Mike. Oh, that last caller should call back in sometime and tell him how much he hates the Canadian Olympics. I watch Alex Jones for like 15 minutes every day just to see if he outlies himself. And today he was telling us how the Germans were cloning rabbits. Well, I doubt it, because when Hitler, one of his first directives was to stop experimentation on animals. Number 2, you take a look at the world map and you look at all the white countries on the map, and almost all of them have health care as a right. Even in Israel, health care is a right and it's nonprofit. Now, if you take Canada and London or England and all the European countries, Australia, you go over to these other countries, and healthcare is a right. In this country, it was pretty much a right back in the 60s and early 70s, but then the health maintenance legislation went through. But for the most part, anywhere you have a white population, you have good quality and ease of access for healthcare, and it's getting much more difficult in this country.
Yes.
Hal Turner had a heart attack on April 22nd. And he was posting his doctor bills. He had to go to the ER in New Jersey. A couple of days later, they had him down for a quadruple bypass. Well, when he got done, his bills were $438,000. You know, he had health insurance. The person that controls healthcare in United Healthcare, the CEO was making of United Healthcare making $78 million a year. Okay, so. The Democrats, they talk about the health care, who's going to pay for it and everything. That's right, who's going to pay for it? But the difference in our country, and the rest of the other white countries, is they don't have a few of these pigs getting all the cash flow. Okay?
Yes.
All the cash in this country is flowing into a very narrow venturi, and it's getting dry. And when the Federal Reserve borrows money to these corporations for nothing, they just go ahead and buy their stock back.
Yes.
So the Federal Reserve and what's going on, that's a conspiracy, because they're allowing this very slim margin of people to own everything. Okay? And I know a lot of the people at RBN, defend capitalism like it's something, like it's the lost ark, okay? But what we have in this country is predatory capitalism, and it kills people.
Well, what we have in this country today is fascism. People. We stopped being a capitalist country a long time ago, 20, 30 years.
Well, fascism, whatever, it's called getting money. Cop gives you a DUI. That's getting money. That's gonna get money out of you for a long time to come. So what we have in this country is very few people getting all the cash.
Yes.
So fascism, predatory capitalism, call it what you want. But, these Democrats, whether they care, I don't think these Democrats give a flying crap about our health care, but right now that's what's flying, and they're just preying on this to make Trump look good. Trump can do anything, and nobody's going to get rid of him. So, hey, thanks for taking my call.
All right, you've got it. Well, Rick, I mean, one of the purposes of these debates is to try and, define the issues for the voters, to tell the voters this is what you should be thinking of. Now, surveys are showing right now most voters are most concerned with the immigration problem, 3 times as much as they are concerned with health care. But the Democrats are trying to pull away from that because they realize the immigration issue and the open borders has become a liability for them in the 2020 election. So they're trying to say, this is what the election's going to be about. This is what you should be thinking about, and ignore all the rest of it. And that's one of the functions of having these debates in the first place. And by the way, as a side note, a lot of countries are cloning rabbits, including Germany and France, mostly for research purposes, so that they have identical genetic copies of rabbits for drug research. Let's go back to the phones here to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Mike, there's a couple things. It touches on a couple of the calls.
Yes.
But first off, it's pretty clear with the complete sellout, given the choice between taking the money from Israel in the fifth column or standing up for our First Amendment rights. Tulsi Gabbard, who was my big hope too, which I'm now disavowing her as well, chose to step on our First Amendment rights and go with the big money from the 1.7% of the population, and even less than that, who are really the big money guys. Secondly, it's become abundantly clear, and the people who are pushing the open borders, the people who are pushing all that, you've got to have the magnet for all the open borders is, among other things, the fact that the healthcare system, and you and I and everybody who's listening here are picking up the tab, but it's a magnet for the people coming in from Central and South America and Mexico and everywhere else. And so they go hand in hand. The more money you spend on the healthcare, we should have it. Also, it's the bigger draw to get people in to ruin us. And by the way, then there's the Democratic Party, which is a champion of all that stuff, which in order to be more diverse, apparently is firing or laying off all their white employees. Did you see that?
Yeah, all the long-term white staffers are being let go because they got to complain about diversity. And I mean, after all, what can it hurt? I mean, look how it worked out for Boeing.
Yeah, right. But you know what, Mike? There was an article, it was over in UNS.com a couple of weeks ago, saying, when are we just going to call it the way it is? The liberals, the Democratic Party, are anti-white. They're trying to get us to buy houses for black people. They're trying to get us to have, of course, it's going to come out of our pocket. We didn't do anything to them. They're trying us to get for reparations. Now they're expunging all the white people who are, dedicated employees to their political beliefs and party, and they're kicking them out. When are we going to come right out and say, Democratic, and you know who owns the Democratic Party and the Republican Party? We've gone over this many times before. Who owns the Federal Reserve? Who owns it all? They're anti-white.
Yes.
They don't want us to have. We're the biggest threat. We're educated. There's more of us. We're the ones that built this, and they're the ones that they're aiming at us to tear down. The other thing is, almost universally among that group that controls us, it starts with a J. At any rate, they certainly are universally advocates of strict gun control.
Yes.
And Bloomberg, everybody else. And you know why? Well, because they own the press. We can't beat them there. They own the courts. We can't beat them there. They own all the representatives. They own the government. They own the presidency. They own everything. But what they can beat us in all those places because they own them, because of the Federal Reserve. But where they can't beat us is in a fight. They cannot beat us in a fight. There's too many. So they have to disarm us and break us up. We can't have an identity, and we can't have weapons. And that's what they're after.
Yep.
And that's why. So what do you think about that, Mike?
Well, no, you've summed it up pretty much. We're heading toward this dystopian society where, government wants total control over every aspect of our lives, including what we eat, what medicines we take. And yes, they want us totally disarmed. In the more extreme, they want us to give up our private cars and confine ourselves to public transportation, like this wonderful light rail system we have down here at the bottom of the hill. And unfortunately, the more they tinker with the society, the worse things get. And we're seeing it in all these Democratic strongholds like San Francisco and Los Angeles and Baltimore and Chicago and so forth.
And, the gentleman who was on before was talking about the economy and so on. He was talking about basically he was referring to the Federal Reserve obliquely, if not outright. But after the housing crisis and all that happened in the, with the bundling derivatives and all that happened in 2007 and 8, when the bankers know that they are debasing our economy.
Yes,
they know. They know that it's the dollar, which they control. They print the money. They control the supply. They know they're debasing it, and it's akin to a piece of soap in the shower that gets smaller every day, and they know it gets smaller every day. So in 2008, and ever since then, when all those people were put out of their homes, largely by fraud, none of the bankers went to jail, but the bankers, know that they're holding on to a declining asset because they're the ones declining it.
Yes.
They're trying to convert that into real wealth by taking people's homes, by buying up the stock market, which that gentleman referred to, and he's right. If you look at that, they're being brought up by things like Vanguard Capital. All the Federal Reserve member boards, banks are buying up the stock market, have been for a long time. But they know they're doing it, and that's why that money is not going to us, it's going to them. What we get is the debasement, and what they get is the hard assets.
Yes. Well, that's the way it's set up. And that's
right.
The way bankers always set it up. And we saw that during the Depression of the 1930s and even early depressions before that. I mean, if you remember vaudeville, the classic stereotypical villain character was a banker who was always clutching a mortgage, and he had his cape and his stovepipe hat and his riding crop. That didn't come out of thin air. That was something that was happening to too many people at that time.
Yeah, but that image is not even allowed to be shown now.
Yes.
Like the Monopoly character, when on the chance or community chest, the banker's always the fat cat and that. That image has gone away. Since the media, they didn't control back in the 30s. They couldn't quite control that image. But now there's none of that. There's none of that at all. And all that's diverted away from the banks. Nobody talks about what you talked about the other day, how they're rigging foreign exchange.
Yes.
They rigged LIBOR. They rigged everything. What haven't they rigged? All rigged for them against us.
Yep.
And, Jesus, they remember high-speed trading, that was rigged.
That got really out of control back in the 80s, but it's under control now. And one of the reasons the derivatives are out of control is those are being not only traded by computers, the derivatives bundles are being put together by computers. It's completely out of control.
Well, and the direction it's going, I guarantee you, and everybody out there, it's not in our favor.
No.
You can trace where the money's going.
These systems are never set up in our favor. The only one that was the one that this country was started with, only because we, the people, were governing ourselves and setting up systems to serve the country and the people. And then the bankers come on in, and they take it on over. And of course, they're going to change it to suit their interests, which is, as you say, the real wealth of the country winds up in their pockets. Anyway, listen, Peter, we got to take a break for commercials. We've got another caller waiting on the line, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones. Boy, it's been a busy day on the phone lines. Terry in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mark, I just got one comment to you and to Dustin and to whoever else that says they're not going to vote. I would like to suggest that you vote for a third party, and whoever it might be. I mean, there might be somebody come up that's more attractive in one of those parties that we all should vote for. But if they see people not voting, that's basically what they want. I mean, they can take control and you don't have a say. But if they see the votes piling up in these third parties, it's telling them that we're dissatisfied with a two-party system. And I don't know about you or Dustin, but I'm fed up with a two-party system because I know they control both of them.
Yep.
They both control. But if we can have more numbers outside of that two-party system, it might create some momentum to do something about it and maybe create another means of having representation. What are your thoughts?
Well, that would be one message we could send to them. The other one being that if you don't vote, that means there's an empty registration out there that the vote riggers can use to cast a phony vote. So we need to make sure that if you are registered to vote, go ahead and vote and use up that registration. But until the election system itself is overhauled, I can understand the frustration of these other callers because our votes really don't matter anymore. And I mean...
That's right, but the only thing we can do is just say, we don't like this system, we're going to vote in another system. And that way, the message is clear than not voting at all.
Well... You need to understand that the way things are set up now, third parties are at a serious disadvantage. The two traditional parties, whoever their candidate is, they're automatically on the ballot in all 50 states, except possibly California over that whole tax thing. We'll see what happens there. If you are running a third party, you have to mount petition drives in all 50 states to get your candidate on that ballot, and that uses up volunteer time, it uses up resources, and for most third parties, that basically can break them right there.
Yes, that's true, but there might be something on the ballot where you can write somebody in, or if somebody is on the ballot that's with a third party, you vote for them. I know, it's tough to get on there, and the system is rigged against a third party. That's why these third parties have to go through all this stuff every time. They can't, take the momentum they started on the prior election. They have to go through it every time.
Yes.
And we have to do whatever we can to say, hey, we don't like the system the way it is, and we want something else. And that would be in their face.
All right. Well, that's one way of looking
Mike,
at it. Anyway,
right.
Terry, there's the music. We got to take a break for station identification, and we'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Getting on back to the international news, Netanyahu has once again reiterated that the settlements in the West Bank are permanent. They will stay forever. And basically, there was the inauguration of yet another settlement project in Efrat. And Netanyahu said none of the settlers or the settlements are to be uprooted. The issue has ended and the settlements are to remain forever. Now, this is not the first time he's made such remarks, but I think it's being made in the context of the upcoming Israeli elections. Meanwhile, Israel has approved a plan to build 700 Palestinian homes in Area C of the West Bank. And that is part of a broader plan, which includes permission to build 6,000 units for Israeli settlers. The Palestinian Authority has responded by saying Palestinians do not need Netanyahu's permission to build on their own land. So they called him on his little arrogance here. This is kind of an interesting little story. An Israeli court has sentenced the lawyer of the PLO's Prisoners Committee to 13 years, 6 months in prison. And Tariq Berkout was arrested by the Israeli occupation forces on the 27th of February this year. apparently underwent harsh interrogation to put pressure on him in order to give what are said to be false confessions. And they also arrested his wife and sister, who were eventually released. But apparently Barghouti is one of the most prominent lawyers known for defending Palestinian prisoners held by Israel. So I guess they wanted him out of play. Up in Canada, and let me start off by saying good for the Canadians on this one. The courts came to a landmark decision, the Federal Court of Canada, saying that wines produced in the illegal settlements in the West Bank cannot be labeled made in Israel. This is something Israel has been pushing for a long time, to say made in Israel, it's all the same stuff, it's all the same. Canada said no. If it's made in the settlements, it has to be stamped made in the settlements, or it cannot be sold inside Canada. And this decision comes just days after the Vancouver City Council rejected an attempt to label Palestinian rights organizations as anti-Semitism. So good for the Canadians on that one. Okay, we've already talked about the BDS issue. I think we've talked about it enough here. Joe Biden was making a foreign policy speech last Thursday at the City University of New York. And Biden warned about the rapid advance of authoritarianism, nationalism, and illiberal tendencies around the world, not just in Russia and China, but among our allies in places like Turkey, the Philippines, and Hungary. Notice what's missing here. Now, Biden is right that the governments of Turkey, the Philippines, and Hungary are increasingly contemptuous of human rights and the rule of law. He could have added India, Poland, Brazil, and even Italy to the list, but the most glaring exception is Israel. All right. Bolton is out there saying that the U.S.-Russian START treaty unlikely to be extended. The New START treaty, the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, was signed back in 2010. And right now it is the only Russia-U.S. arms control treaty. And what it does, it limits the number of deployable ICBMs, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, nuclear-armed bombers, and nuclear warheads. Both Russia and the United States have huge nuclear arsenals. Most of those are in storage because of the START treaty. The current treaty expires in 2021, and Bolton is saying it will not be extended. In other words, yep, crank them all up. We're going to have some fun. Alrighty, North Korea has launched 2 more short-range ballistic missiles, apparently, tests. They were launched from the Wonsan-Kalma area and traveled a distance of 155 miles, reaching an altitude of 18 miles. They were not aimed at anything. They posed no threat to the U.S. or allies. They fell into the sea. It was a test. But North Korea is sending a message that they have run out of patience with the United States actually coming to the table with something substantive regarding disarmament here. Okay, as you know, we now have a space force to go on up there and do battle, I guess, with ET. And now General Charles Q. Brown is saying that the United States needs more military power at the South Pole because I guess those penguins don't like us very much. And it's just another way for the Pentagon to spend tons of money preparing to fight wars in places where nobody lives and which are inconsequential. There is really nothing down in Antarctica worth fighting over, but that's not going to stop General Brown. So Brown noted the U.S. military doesn't have a huge number of icebreakers. That is true. And he says with Earth having 2 poles and all, have to split the ones they do between the Arctic and the Antarctic. Now, a lot of people are concerned. U.S. officials have made plays recently for more Arctic gear to fight Russian and Chinese aggression over resources in the far north. And yes, there are resources up there. They have discovered there is more oil and gas on the abyssal plain. But of course, getting at it is going to be difficult if you remember what happened with the Deepwater Horizon. There is no sign that resources would even be a thing in Antarctica, which is land and not ocean. And nobody looks to be staking any claims down there anyway. So we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Okay, this U.S. military jet just crashed near Death Valley, and it happened earlier today. As of the last report, the pilot's status is unknown. It's a U.S. Navy FA-18E Super Hornet fighter jet, and it crashed in western Death Valley. They've set out a search and rescue helicopter trying to find the pilot and figure out just what the heck happened. All right, so finally we get to the economic news here, and the big story is that, as expected, the Federal Reserve has announced it has cut the key interest rates it controls by 25 basis points. That's basically 0.25%. This is the Fed's first rate cut in more than a decade. Counterintuitively, the stock market took a major plunge. And that may illustrate the reality that the old tricks don't work. Lower rates won't help stimulate much economic activity. Maybe it will arouse a little more financial engineering activity on Wall Street. Well, it hasn't so far. And it might give a temporary boost to mortgage refinancing. But the economic recovery of the last 8 years has been an illusion based on massive money printing and credit creation. And credit creation is de facto money printing until the point at which the debt needs to be repaid. Right now, our entire system has reached debt saturation. And that's why the economy is contracting, despite all the tricks the Federal Reserve is trying to pull. All right, according to Bloomberg, of the 1,600 firms giving first half guidance, 40% predicted a drop in earnings. That E in your PE ratio is trending lower. Cheap is now becoming relative. Pardon me. Over in Warren, Michigan, General Motors has started closure of their transmission plant. This plant has been there making transmissions for 78 years. GM is shutting it down and laying off 335 American workers. It's another sign that the economy is not doing as well as the corporate media is trying to assure you that it would. Over in Europe, they're having problems there. It looks like France is slipping into recession. Spain's big 5 banks, which is already down from the big 6, could soon be 4. And basically, the European Central Bank's negative interest rate policy is crushing the Eurozone bank's ability to turn a profit. This is coming from the CEO of Bankia, Jose Sevilla. It's clear that the current rate scenario is hurting the profitability of the banking system. We think low rates are good and perhaps even desirable, but the same cannot be said of negative interest rates since they destroy the bank's profitability equation. Well, of course they do. Of course they do. So, down on the border, apparently Antifa is preparing for a violent 10-day siege on the southern border in El Paso, Texas, in an effort to shut down immigration and customs enforcement and open the border to a new flood of illegal immigrants. Journalist Andy No, who was brutally attacked by Antifa in Portland last month, showed flyers Antifa is using to promote their effort for September, featuring images of ICE agents being murdered with bows and arrows and fire bombs, while anarchists bomb an ICE facility and southern border wall to let illegals flow into the United States of America. Well, right there, that seems like a good justification for deploying the army, because you're dealing with an armed insurrection there. Now, this story illustrate something we've mentioned before. This is from the Epoch Times. Apparently, this illegal immigrant literally bought a baby for $80 in Guatemala to bring with him to the U.S. To gain a priority release, and was caught with a DNA test. The man was a Honduran national, and when the DNA test said, no, this baby does not belong to this gentleman, he confessed to what's going on. But apparently this has become big business, where people coming to this country will rent or buy children to try and get through and get the priority release. And the prices run obviously from $80 up to $1,000 or more. So what a mess. I mean, the damage from our brain-dead immigration system is just spreading. Because if we had a solid border down there, if we had a border wall down there and it was absolutely closed and we weren't letting anybody in, then you wouldn't have people going on out and trying to buy 6-month-old babies. So indirectly, this is the fault of U.S. immigration policy. Okay, a little bit of good news here. At least 23 people have been arrested after an undercover investigation into human trafficking in Mississippi. And according to WJTV, Clinton Police and the Hinds County Sheriff's Department say there are multiple charges ranging from prostitution, procuring the services of a prostitute, drug possession, and enticing a child for sexual purposes. And according to investigators, suspicious online activity indicated people were traveling to Clinton to commit these crimes. Now, authorities are saying Clinton isn't necessarily the hub of the activity, but the town's location along I-20, which is a major thoroughfare for tracking, means law enforcement is particularly vigilant about the opportunity for this type of activity. So at least they're starting to get some of these people here. Okay, Fox News was given rare access to an immigration and detention facility in Adelanto, California. Video cameras were allowed inside, and it shows that all these claims of inhumane conditions and overcrowding are absolute lies. It's a nice facility. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want to live there, but they have a law library. They have access to 24-hour health and mental care. They have outdoor soccer fields. And what was revealed by this Fox News report is drastically at odds with all of this haranguing we're hearing from the open borders people saying, oh, you can't put these people in these facilities. They're inhumane. You just have to let them into the country so that they can vote Democratic next year. All right, you want to talk about a betrayal here? And I can't imagine the British people are going to be very happy about this. Boris Johnson is already dropping hints that Britain may extend the EU exit transition, meaning Brexit, for 2 more years. And I'm sure the British people are going to be very angry about that, because Boris was campaigning on we'll be out in 90 days. And now we're saying, whoops, nope, sorry about that. Misread the calendar. Going to be 2 years. Don't you just get fed up with voting for politicians who make all these promises to you and then it doesn't happen? I'm beginning to understand why so many people are out there saying it's time for the tar and feathers, ropes, rails, and guillotines. Now, January of 2018, those of us here in Hawaii went through this rather bizarre experience where there was a false alarm sent out over the emergency notification system to the digital highway signs, to our cell phones and tablets, declaring that there was an incoming ballistic missile. It was no drill. And it had, you know, dramatic effects. I mean, people were putting their kids down in the storm drains to protect them. And it caused a lot of anxiety. But apparently there has been a study showing that the anxiety has continued to this very day. And it's not something people forget. And I know that because I have that T-shirt saying I have survived the Hawaii ballistic missile. And whenever I wear it around here locally, and I wore it out to Kauai, everybody laughs and nods. They know exactly what I'm talking about. And we still don't have a really good explanation of how that came to be. You know, they're saying that somebody, who didn't get fired apparently, hit the wrong button on the menu and sent the message out that they were in the middle of installing a ballistic missile warning system. I am wondering if it wasn't actually a test to see how people were going to react by the U.S. government. And the reason I say that is because they had a similar incident only 2 days later in Japan, where they got a false alarm that a missile was coming on in. So let's talk about the millennials, who are viewed more or less in a negative light. They're considered whiners, the Y generation. Many of them are still needing money from their parents to get through life. And they've delayed marriage, children, home ownership. They're spending what money they have servicing their student loans. And what they have left over, they use to go on these fun adventures throughout Southeast Asia, which would be a lot of fun. I wouldn't mind doing that myself, especially Bali. But apparently, some of these youngsters have been backpacking in countries like Hong Kong and Thailand without enough money. And they're basically just begging from the indigenous people for enough money to complete their trip, according to The Guardian. And the Southeast Asians are very upset, because it's one thing to be sitting there in the street with a bowl, obviously hungry and begging for money, and it's another thing to be standing there in your Nike cross trainers and your North Shore backpack and your sunglasses and saying, "Can you give me some money to get home?" And it's not sending a positive image of the United States to the rest of the world for this to be happening. And I think that's something. When you travel abroad, please think of yourself as an ambassador and put the best face forward to try and rebuild America's image in the world, because it's hurting right now. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Now, over in Greenville County, South Carolina, there was an ugly incident back on the 14th of June where Dick Trench was shot 4 times inside his home by a sheriff's deputy shooting from the outside. Now, originally, the Greenville County Sheriff's Office claimed that Dick Trench pulled the door open and pointed a handgun directly at the deputy, thus making the shooting clearly justified. And by the way, Dick was shot 4 times. However, somebody got the body cam footage out and found out that wasn't what had happened. And apparently there had been a spurious alarm went off inside Dick Trench's home. The sheriff's deputy was sent over there. Dick Trench had heard somebody was creeping around outside. Now, Dick Trench is a concealed carry permit holder, and so he pulled his gun and he was inside his home, and the sheriff's deputy, looking in from outside the home through the window, saw Dick standing there holding a gun, not pointing it, holding it, and shot him 4 times. So I think there's something deficient in the training. Apparently, Dick was on the ground screaming, "Call the cops," and the sheriff's deputy said, "I am the cops." So let's talk a little bit about computers and human interface. We were talking yesterday about how they are developing an implantable device to deal with ADHD, which doesn't really exist. When I was a kid, we called it teacher is boring the heck out of me. But apparently Elon Musk, fresh from his success at Tesla, is out there working on a human brain computer interface. And apparently trials are starting next year for this artificial intelligence chip to be inserted into your brain. Thank you, no, Elon. I am not ready to be chipped, especially in my brain. I need what little of it I have left. So, now a little bit of good news. There is a new bill under consideration that would ban autoplay videos on websites. And these can be a problem, and I try and keep them from whatreallyhappened.com, because while I do not encourage users to read the website at their place of employment, some of them do. Maybe they legitimately have got free time that they can kill. But when the autoplay videos play, it calls attention to the fact that they're looking at something that is not work-related, and they can get into trouble. So apparently somebody else realized that was an issue, and they're looking at this legislation that says autoplay videos are forbidden. And it's also going to forbid what's called endless scrolling. One of the things that has really bothered me lately is in their rush to get websites out there, get product out there, code writing has become very sloppy. Part of the problem, of course, is that the code has become gratuitously complex. Now, I started writing websites back in the days of HTML, when there really wasn't all that much to put together a web page with links in it. And it worked really well. Then you had Microsoft come along and declare that they were going to redefine some of the link language inside what was then the Mozilla standard. And all of a sudden, the workload doubled for people writing web pages because they had to put in switches. Is this browser, Microsoft Explorer, or is it something else? If it's Explorer, use this line of code. If it's something else, use that line of code. And over time, we have seen the code used for web development just grow and grow and grow, and there's all these little different packages, and it's created its own industry of permanent education for web page designers to have to attend to and spend money on. Now, I appreciate the idea of having databases linked to a dynamic web page. It does make them more useful. That's what makes whatreallyhappened.com more useful than its predecessor, Rancho Runamucka. But again, some of those can be gratuitously complex. I think right now, if you are looking at creating a dynamic website, the LAMPS approach is probably the best way to go. Because some of the commercial offerings I've seen, they are obfuscated, they are clunky, they are bug prone, and of course part of their marketing strategy is that you will pay monthly for a maintenance contract so that they'll keep you up and running when the system goes down, which happens a lot. All right, we've got to take another break here for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, out in California, seismologists are getting very nervous about recent activity. Now, we had these two big events out near Ridgecrest, and everybody said, no, it's going to be fine, and it's not the big one, and you're going to be okay. Well, apparently, privately, internally, there is a concern. There have been more than 80,000 earthquakes since July 4th. Now, most of them are very tiny, can't be felt on the surface, but there are a couple of disturbing patterns forming because these aftershocks, or these swarms, if you will, are basically moving across the state. And they're approaching the Owens Valley Fault and the Garlock Fault. And they're very concerned there because seismologists are now concerned that we could be seeing a slow motion rupture that could reach these faults and trigger some quakes. Now, the Owens Valley Fault triggered an earthquake of magnitude 7.8 back in 1872, one of the largest in California's modern record. The Ridgecrest aftershocks have also headed southwest toward the Garlock Fault. This is a lesser-known fault, but it's capable of producing an earthquake of magnitude 8 or more. So they're very concerned that there may be some big ones coming on in. And I remember living in California. Earthquake awareness was just part of, what you did. All right, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. Remember them? They opposed the North Dakota Access Pipeline in vain. They have now launched a huge solar farm near the same area, and apparently Democrat Tulsi Gabbard arrived on horseback to show her support for the project. I think that's a little pandering, if you will, here. But apparently the tribe has partnered with nonprofit Give Power to create a 300 kilowatt community solar farm on the reservation just 3 miles from the Dakota Access Pipeline. I think that's a good idea. They certainly have enough room out there for solar power if the solar cells can be made less expensive and more durable. That's been a big problem, is solar panels wearing out a little too early, if you will. Story that came on out from Russia Today. Exoplanet that sports 3 suns offers tantalizing sight in search for alien life. And it's called LTT 1445AB. It's just 22 and a half light years away from Earth. Was found using data gathered by NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, or TESS, which searches for exoplanets. Now, why this is a tantalizing sight in the search for alien life, I don't know. But there is a lesson to be learned here, because apparently this planet is orbiting stably somehow within a trinary star system. Now, when I was in college and I was taking astronomy classes, it was sort of a given. You can't have solar systems around more than one star. There's no way they will ever be stable. Well, real world experience and factual evidence is always going to trump theory, because here we have one. I'm sure there's a lot of amazing stuff out there. All right, let's talk a little bit about human-caused global warming. And one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest promotions, if you will, of human-caused global warming was the ethanol craze. Oh, we're going to take corn, which especially this year we don't have enough of anyway, and we're going to turn it into ethanol and put it into the fuel tank, and the car will burn the ethanol and it'll go back up into the air. But then when the corn regrows, it'll reabsorb the carbon dioxide and it will be carbon neutral. Well, it didn't really work out that way. There was the carbon that was being produced by the processing of the corn into the ethanol. And ethanol had a problem early on. In older car systems, it was destroying the fuel systems. And so people were having to pay to get their fuel systems repaired. Newer cars are able to take ethanol up to a certain amount. Excuse me. There's that EA10 that's out there. Now they're pushing for EA15. On our car, it says this car will accept EA10, but nothing higher than that. There are car manufacturers who say if you use ethanol gasoline in the car, it voids the engine warranty. And as it turns out, the entire operation was a boondoggle. It's producing 1 million barrels per day of unprofitable energy. It's costing more to make than they can sell it for. And even worse, you have to buy and burn more of it to get the same amount of work as you would out of gasoline, because there's less energy in the ethanol. But it sounded really good. It made for great television and sound bites and political speeches. And again, was forced onto us with the power of law, with the power of Congress, power of Grayskull, will force you to put this stuff in your car, wreck your engines. And again, a lot of the stuff we're being told, it's out there to sell product, and very often the product isn't a good one. Whether it's this ethanol gasoline, questionable vaccines, GMO food. Corporate media is working hand in glove to keep up the fear, to keep your fear up. So, oh yes, please give me the E810 gasoline. Please stick a needle in my arm. Please give me this processed food because I don't trust what Mother Nature does anymore. Okay, now teen climate change activist Greta Thunberg, who was on Megan's Vogue cover, has announced she will travel across the Atlantic to the United States in a high-tech sailboat because she's too green to fly. But she wants to use a high-tech racing yacht to bring her message to America. Well, it sounds like a good idea until you get out into the middle of that North Atlantic, which can be very, very rough. But she is making a point, because there's yet another one of these environmental conclaves that all of the movers and shakers are going to in their private jets, belching out tons of carbon into the atmosphere. But are we really getting warmer or not? More and more scientists who are not on Al Gore's payroll are saying, no, we're going into a grand solar minimum. Expect temperatures to be going down. We had another hard winter, and it was hard leaving. And apparently up in the Upper Peninsula, there are still little tiny piles of snow that have not yet melted, this being in July. And the global warming people are out there screaming, oh, humans are wrecking the earth, humans are destroying the earth. Right now, in a geologic sense, if you will, humans occupy less than 3% of the surface of the earth. There is still a lot of room out there. Doesn't mean we should waste it, doesn't mean we should misuse it. But all the doom and gloom scenarios of overcrowding, the overcrowding is artificial. It's taking place in the cities. If people were to leave the cities and go back to a rural existence, especially with their own farms, things would get a lot better. But the money junkies like you inside those cities, easier to get you into the stores to sell you things, easier to keep track of you and collect taxes. Cities are basically human farms, human ranches. That's really what they are. Keep you corralled on up, lure you on in, keep you under control so that you can be harvested in terms of your money. So that your children can be easily captured and put into the public schools and brainwashed and eventually taken into military service. Now, a lot of agricultural imports into this country come from Brazil. And Brazil has a very bad record regarding toxic pesticides. The Brazilian government has approved 262 so far this year alone, and loosened regulations on what is considered extremely toxic. And apparently this is affecting people far outside their borders. Now, most of these pesticides are banned in the European Union, but apparently they're still being manufactured in the European Union, sold to Brazil, and then they wind up coming back to the European Union inside the Brazilian food they are eating. This is coming from the environmental journalist and founding member of the Green Economic Institute think tank, Oliver Tickle. And he explained that as one of the largest soy exporters in the world, Brazil supplies a significant quantity of the feed that cattle and other livestock worldwide consume. European consumers tucking into a juicy steak have no idea that the creature they're eating might have been nourished on soy sprayed with these highly toxic pesticides. So it's a problem. Pardon me. Story coming out of Natural Blaze here. American freedom is under attack once more. New vaccine mandates are being announced state by state, spurred on by the fear of measles. You see it in the headlines, measles is coming to get you. Measles will tear the tags off your couch cushions. Measles is going to steal socks from your dryers. But if you're my age, you'll remember that measles, like the flu, is actually a harmless childhood cyclical infection. It's almost a rite of passage. And natural measles infection confers lifelong immunity, something that the measles vaccine does not do. And it strengthens the immune system to reduce the chance of cancers later in life. And apparently there is a documented negative association between measles infection and Parkinson's disease, meaning if you get the natural measles infection, you are less likely to get Parkinson's. Okay, we have a caller on the line. Ken in New York, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike.
Aloha.
I'd like to know why does aviation fuel still contain lead?
You're talking about avgas?
Yeah.
Probably for the same reason it used to contain it for the cars, is to keep the edges of the cylinders smooth.
Yeah, and I guess it costs a lot more money to rebuild, and you have to rebuild aircraft engines more often.
That would be part of it. The other part of it is that the aircraft engines would be larger and heavier and less powerful without that lead coating. And when you're dealing with aviation, weight is a big problem.
And I noticed that more people are starting to repair older cars, and
Yes.
I mean from like the 60s through the 80s.
Yes.
Does this imply that you have to run leaded gas through them, being older engines? Or
I
does
think, unfortunately, yeah, that's going to be the reality. But if you restore an older car and it's declared to be a classic car restoration, I think most states have a waiver saying that you can go ahead and put leaded gas in there. Most people who are restoring those older cars, though, don't intend to drive them on a regular basis. They just want to park them out front and have them be admired. One of the few TV shows that Claire and I watch on a regular basis is American Pickers. And one of the fun parts is where they find these really old cars that I knew when I was a little tiny kid, and they'll get them restored. And I think it's great to just hang on to your history like that.
Well, I am seeing more people use them as street cars, and not necessarily show grade, but just I see more of them on the road now. And my own personal feeling is because they have bumpers on them, and they'll survive an accident better without destroying your investment.
That could be a factor of it. I mean, people can't afford to buy new cars. And so, yeah, I imagine probably snatching up somebody's old clunker and putting a little work into it. And some people enjoy working on engines. I did when I was younger. Today's modern cars are impossible for the owner-driver to work on. They are intended to be worked on by a licensed service technician who will charge you an appropriate amount of money to do that. And I don't like the modern car. I mean, I like the accessories. I like the backup camera and all the rest of it. I don't like these rounded gumdrop shapes. It makes it really difficult to see where the car begins and ends when you're trying to park or change lanes. The older cars, they had class. And yes, I know they weren't aerodynamic and they were more wasteful. And maybe I'm just wallowing in nostalgia here. But I did like those older cars.
I was told by a repair shop that fixes up older cars. He's actually my repairman. I asked him if there was any problem in running unleaded gas in a classic, say, a 60s or a 70s car, and he says he doesn't think so. Now, could this have something to do with the way the engine is rebuilt? That's the last part of my question. I can take my answer off the air.
All right. Well, I'm remembering back when leaded gasoline first came along, and there were warnings on the pump that you shouldn't put the leaded gasoline into cars designed for unleaded gasoline, but I don't remember seeing a warning going the other way. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right, Ken, well, thanks. We're going to let you go. And yeah, I mean, there's still some fuels that still have lead. There are still some vaccines that still have aluminum, mercury, thimerosal in them. We know there are things that are bad for us, but they're still out there. Okay, we got to take a break for commercial. We'll be back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today. And during the recent confirmation hearing for General John Hyten, who's being considered to be the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a rather interesting revelation came from Senator Mike Rounds. And the revelation was that only about 10% of America's B-1 bombers are actually combat ready. And the others are in various states of not being mission capable. So they're talking basically 6 out of the Air Force's 61 B-1 bombers. Now that is rather shameful, but not entirely unexpected when you hear some of these other horror stories about our actual military readiness. So in response, John Hyten implored lawmakers to provide B-1 maintenance funding. So again, it's a beg for more money. And we just don't have it. We do not have it. Okay, over in Michigan, out in the rural area, there was this nonprofit group, Opus Bono Sacerdoti Catholic. They had a series of unmarked buildings, and basically they would give shelter and legal help to protect hundreds of priests accused of sexual abuse. They actually have a motto: we turn no priest away. And it's estimated they've had thousands of Catholic priests come through their shelter and stripped of their collars and cassocks. These defrocked priests went unnoticed in the small town of Dryden as they were escorted into a dingy warehouse right across the street from an elementary school playground. Well, there's some good planning for you. And I still don't understand where all of that is coming from, and I never will, and I'm not interested in knowing here. Apparently, Teslas will soon be able to stream Netflix and YouTube, I presume for the passenger, in the passenger seat here. That's one of the weird things about Claire and my car. You can play a DVD in that dashboard. Really? I thought I was supposed to keep my eyes on the road. Okay. Apparently, rapper ASAP, with the S is actually a $, has now been accused of calling for President Trump's assassination in a 2018 song where he says the president an a-hole and he's praying for a JFK, which does sound to me like, yeah, he's encouraging an assassination here. Okay, the debate over encryption is continuing, and apparently the Department of Justice and FBI are showing no signs of admitting to their past untruths regarding regarding encryption here. Sorry, I'm multitasking. There's the music. Time for me to get out of here. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots to share with you. Please take what you learn here and at the website. Share it with everybody that you know. Please donate to Republic Broadcasting. Please, please, please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. And we'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.